good.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'd like to call this regular Board of Finance meeting of Monday, May 16th, 2022 to order. First item on the agenda is public forum. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Seeing none. Item number 2, approval of minutes. Regular meeting minutes of April 18th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any discussion, corrections?
I think just on page 1 there was
Sure,
some
go ahead.
paragraphs that got repeated twice.
Yes, I had the same thing with a big
That
question.
really wasn't a big
That was
deal.
it, just for clarity's sake, yeah.
Zap out 2 of them.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add?
The only other thing I had is a little further up at the top of page 2.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, you made a note about the balancing report. I just wanted to know if we want to add a reference as to which project that was referencing.
Oh, top of page 2.
Yeah.
No, page 3 under item 12, curious, the balancing report. I guess, yeah, if you don't have the standing building minutes.
Right. And I thought that was as to...
Page 3, item...
There was a report that they were waiting, that they were trying to find what the original report was referencing to.
Well, page 3, item... Which page? Item 12?
Yeah.
The original report was regarding project commissioning for Melissa Jones and Baldwin.
Yeah.
Looks like this report was for Baldwin.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I just thought if a reference in there might be.
Yeah, no, yeah, because no one would know other than those having the building committee minutes. So yeah, that was Baldwin Mills. Thanks, Jim.
That was it.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Okay. Item number 3, correspondence, standing building committee minutes. We all got them 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I also spoke to Dave DeMeo. He's not able to join us tonight. He has a personal commitment. So we all have them. We just got them. I haven't been able to look at them. Obviously, none of us have. So I would say if there's anything regarding those minutes, take a review of them after our meeting. And if there's any questions or comments, just get them to me, and I'll send them on to David. And then next month, actually, we could just hit May and June for the meeting minutes, assuming we have both of them. And also a note that Mary Jane brought to my attention, pension did not meet, so we don't have any pension committee or OPEB. So that makes correspondence fairly quick this month. So we'll move right up to item number 4, review and accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education for April 2022. Ashley, if you'd like to come up. And you could actually introduce yourself too when you come up.
Okay.
That you're taking Linda Trudeau's spot this evening. So thank you for doing that. I know Moira Rader is on Zoom to provide, I guess, the review report. So hello,
Yes.
Moira. Ashley?
I'm Ashley Bannon. I'm the accounting coordinator in the business office at Guilford Public Schools.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. We will do everything we can to be nice to you this evening.
I have notes prepared.
Yeah, yeah, you too, Mary Jane. Moira, would you like to go ahead and start us off in the report?
Sure, I'll keep it as brief as I can.
Okay.
I know that you guys get copies of a lot of this, but I'll just run through the big picture items. Expenditures for the month of April for the Board of Ed were $4,614,237.71. Revenue for April was $28,816.66, which included a little over $7,600 from the Title III grant for tutor salaries and a little over $21,000 from Medicaid. In terms of salaries, employee benefits, everything is pretty much tracking per last year. Tuition is a little lower, which is good. And speaking with Linda, we really don't anticipate that changing before the close of the fiscal year. The safety, sanitation, upkeep of buildings and grounds under purchase services is a little high, but this is typical for this time of year because Cliff kind of plans out some things, and then at this time of year, we can kind of reevaluate and pull back on some outstanding things. So that should level off after this month. And so the warrant you're submitting in total bulk payments is $2,089,290.85. If we go to the reconciliation page, there, it's a little busier than usual, but nothing out of the ordinary. Like I mentioned, the revenue, the state Title III, the salary reimbursement for tutors and Medicaid. We get, what's interesting in terms of reimbursements, we get what's called a global energy CLNP credit. And I inquired to Cliff about this, and what happens is when we're having a really strong electricity draw, you know, a hot day in summer or a series of days, CLNP will actually ask us to power down some things within district. And very often we can if it's in the evening or not. And when we do this, we actually get issued a credit. So it's not a big credit, but it's something, so that's interesting to know. And now that we have, you know, we had gone through that whole project with Johnson Controls, we really have a little bit more ability to do this pretty efficiently and pretty quickly. So that's good. We have a few refunds in here with Craig, High Hopes, and High School. And those are situations where a student might have left the district and we had already paid part of the tuition, so we've received a credit back for that. So moving on to specifics on the warrant, there were just some that I found interesting or had some questions about and thought I'd share them with all of you. There was just one on page 1, and it was from A&W, and this was actually just to put a stone driveway at the barn near A.W. Cox, because we use some of our district vehicles are housed there. We had a line for all Bright Electric on page 1. And it was about $11,500. And what happened was at the high school field, we had lines, conduits that failed. We think when the construction of the actual high school was happening, some water got in these lines and caused a power failure out to one of our scoreboards. So that work had to be done. But Cliff assured me that, you know, they were really careful in pulling the old lines and securing the new ones. So we should not have that problem again. Another item on page 7 that was interesting to me was Lions Assessment Consulting. I'm just going to pull up the actual amount here. And that was for $46.56 and 64 cents. And it says GHS Science Assessment. And what this is consultation and training for our new science standards. We have the next generation science curriculum. And over several months, there was training and meetings. So it was professional development specifically for that curriculum. And then a few other things. We have a contract with Nationwide Security Corp, and I just noticed this month on page 8, there were a series of, you know, charges and service calls. And so I inquired, is it worth having a service contract? But Cliff said no, that this is just a little atypical, but we had some needing to update some equipment. So this month it was a little higher, but that won't be the norm. Another one I found interesting was on page 9, Power School. That is the holy grail for us parents. It's where all the kids' grades as of 7th grade and up are posted, communications in terms of their schedule and things like that. But there's an $8,000 warrant amount in here. And what that's going to do is add to that program called e-collect forms. And hopefully what that's going to do is streamline all those lovely packets of forms that parents get in the beginning of the year or different communications throughout the year. So it's hopefully going to reduce our paper usage and getting lost in the backpack and be really more efficient. And it'll really help teachers to quickly communicate with parents as well. So that's a good expense right there. And the only other one I thought was interesting on page 6, Insight Education Corp, $83,3250. And while this is an expense, it was an expense to create recruitment and retention videos and outreach, but it is going to be refunded by a grant. So while you see the expense now, we actually, the district applied for a very large grant, so that's great. So that will be offset by that in the future. And that's really my report. Unless anyone has any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Mara. I think we'll Why don't we go back to the financials first, the summary?
Okay.
I just had, I think, only one question. Actually, two. One was on tutors was running low. Just curious, I guess I'm just curious why that's running lower than usual. It's not a huge amount, but that was one question that I had.
Yeah, I
So-
have that same question, and
Yeah.
I think it's two parts. One, we just aren't having as large demand for that, and two, we are at a constant deficit of substitutes and tutors. So, but I think it's more, actually, I remember asking Linda about this, and I believe it was more just less of a need right now,
Mhm.
but beyond that, I really couldn't offer any more information. We can find out more, but I remember asking the same question.
Okay. My second question was on transportation on the special education buses was running higher. At about 87% versus, 62 and 71 in past years.
Yeah, let me pull that out.
It's interesting that special education transportation in the buses is running higher, yet the tuition is running,
So last year,
Lower,
we,
so-
on Wednesdays, we got a discount because the students weren't in school.
Yeah.
But we still had to pay the contract. So we did get a discount on the Wednesdays, so compared to last year,
yeah,
it's a bit higher.
okay,
But on a normal year, I think that it would be in line.
okay. Thank you. That's good. All right.
It may also depend on the specific outplacements we have, if they're further away and they're
Right, yeah,
They-
that's kind of the
they
obvious
gave-
one, yeah,
day placement, that they're
Okay.
taking a bus back and forth, that could impact it as well.
okay. Anything else on the summary?
Now, I wanted to ask you about a couple of them that are running high.
Go ahead.
They're over budget. We probably talked about them before, but maybe you could just give me a little recap. One of the really bigger ones was safety, sanitation, and upkeep of building and grounds. It's like you're 250,000 over budget.
That's mostly the encumbrances, right? That Cliff will go through and he'll knock some of these out.
Okay, you think that's gonna get cleaned up with the encumbrances? Okay.
We're working
Yes,
on that.
yes.
It always runs high this time of year.
That always
and then it
happens at the
backs
end of the
out.
year, right?
Yeah.
All right, go
It's
ahead.
very typical for this time of year. It does look like it's a big overage, but it actually levels out after, like what Mike just said.
I only answered that because I asked that question usually about this time. After a number of years, you kind of figure it
I
out.
did give him a list and he's going through it, clearing it up.
All right, I'll try to just hit a couple more. I
Go
mean,
ahead,
there's
go
a
ahead.
few of them that are running over budget, but I think overall, we're under budget, right? A little bit, slightly. But how about the insurance line? Looked like that was about 29,000 over or so.
Under purchase services.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a couple in there that are running hot.
Well, I know that professional tech services and dues and fees were mentioned, is that's going to be reimbursed
Correct.
by grants.
Yep,
I did notice insurance is running higher, too.
and then maybe dues and fees.
Yeah,
But that's gonna
dues and fees is going to be reimbursed.
That's also part of the grant,
Yeah, there's
Okay.
two grants are
so
going
it's
to
really just insurance.
Yeah, I know, one of the questions I had was about our cybersecurity coverage. It has gotten higher, and actually, the company that carries that policy is really hedging to not carry it anymore. So I know Linda, they are putting out requests for pricing from other vendors. It's actually really, not a lot of agencies want to, we have our consultant doing this for us, obviously, but it's a really important thing to have, especially in a school district in this day and age, but it's one of these tenuous things that some, big insurance companies are kind of stepping away from or afraid to enter into. So we'll get more information on that, but hopefully we'll be able to capture some savings in the next vendor.
So I think that overage is related to more expensive cyber insurance than we expected?
It could be for right now. I wish Linda was here to clarify that, but I remember having that conversation as well.
We did put a line in for next year's budget for cyber.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of new for.
It was not in this year's budget.
Okay.
Okay.
So
But I believe there was an expense this year.
Yeah,
for
that
it.
was.
Yeah.
Something related?
Yeah.
All right, and another question I had was the COVID supplies expense, and I thought that that would have been countered by grant money as well. Is that true? It's like we have $120,000 of COVID supplies.
I think we're in the process of moving it over to the ESSER 3 funds. It's just a matter of moving.
So if it was purchased like after a certain date, then we can't count it.
Do you think it's going to be a partial? So
I don't know
thought-
when the
last
ESSER
time we
grant-
brought it up, I thought that the grants were going to cover a lot of these costs.
I think it covers a lot of it, but I do know there's a date deadline on those.
There were a few warrants that also had noted ESSER 3. There were a few
Yes.
warrants
Yeah,
that, when
and
you
I
saw it,
think-
said ESSER 3, so.
And I think Linda tried to move, or was going to move most of it, because she gave us the grant reports last time.
Yeah. My notes say that we're working on moving these over to the ESSER 3.
Okay, so that's strategies in play.
Yeah.
All right.
And the dues and fees, those are for IB training. So we prepay it in the beginning of the year, and the students at the end of the year pay the dues, and then that offsets it.
Oh, I see. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else on the financials
That's about it.
summary? On the warrants, Moira, thank you. You hit quite a few that I had. The only one, I guess, remaining was on that first page. It was Advanced Copy Technologies. What caught my attention wasn't really the amount, because I know that can get up there, but the indication of and overage.
Right,
Is
so
that?
I had it highlighted as well.
Okay.
So what happens is, per our lease agreement, we have a certain number of copies and color copies per copier. And then if we go over, it's a certain charge per page.
Right.
And so this is the summary of that. I don't know if it's for the fiscal year or not, but, Linda said, we don't want to get to the point where we're making teachers put in, ID numbers on copiers to say who made 20 copies versus 10. But that's what it is right now, and it's part of the lease agreement, and it's a per page charge. And color gets more expensive, obviously. So that was the explanation she gave me for that.
We have the same thing, a lot of us who have offices have the same thing in our offices. I guess the question I had is that a common occurrence with overages? And I'm sure if it is, you're going to be looking at the contracts to see if there's a change in that contract in the future to be able to have
Yeah.
the ability to do more copies at a lesser amount instead of going over like
Yeah,
you
I
do
think
your
she
minutes on
spoke
your cell
about-
phone or something, Well, that doesn't happen
Yeah.
anymore, but.
Yeah.
The schools have been contacted about the overage, and
Yeah.
they've been told to watch what they're
Okay.
copying at this point.
All right. Yeah, that's the only thing that got my attention. I was wondering how, because I don't remember seeing that often, so.
Yeah,
If it's.
we extended our contract for the copiers this year because of COVID reasons and not getting used. But in the long run, that's saving us money on the contract.
Yeah.
So we are looking
Okay.
at a new contract, I believe next year it is.
Yeah, I remember Linda also indicating that they actually made a very attractive agreement to extend it because there's such a lack of ability to get new copier equipment and new copiers. So we kept these since we didn't get as much use in the last year or two, that there would be some savings there as well in extending the contract.
Okay. I think that's it for anything on the minutes.
I have one question on the warrant.
Oh, keep going. Yep, sure.
Page 6, all the tent heater rentals, and I know that those have come up several times. I noticed the tent at the high school had been taken down, and was just curious if those are going to be used next year, or if that was, just a couple COVID years and they won't be coming back, or where those stand.
I know that Dr. Freeman said, I believe we rented some and we purchased others. I'm not sure which specifically we own versus rent, but I know we rent the heaters, and the heaters will come off the warrant as the weather improves. So hopefully by next month, we won't be seeing those line items for that. But the specifics to what will happen with the tents hasn't been discussed or shared with us in great detail.
I believe some of the expenses were to take the tent down. That high school one might be to take the tent down. But I can look into that if you would like. Okay.
The-
I thought they were going away.
I do believe that we bought some of the tents.
Yeah.
Some of them were a little bit more strategically placed than others, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the high school one was in the middle of the parking lot, and that's gone now, that some of them are on grass fields that might be.
I don't think they're ever truly going to go away. I mean, it ended up working pretty well.
Yeah,
So
if they're useful.
I think some of them will be useful. Yeah. All right. And that tuition report, I always seem to forget to bring up the tuition report. When Linda sends it, and then we forget to go over it. But right now, it's looking about 190,000 under budget, which is good news. Going this far into the fiscal year, so hopefully that's maintained.
Yeah, Jason didn't anticipate anything to, to really throw that off, being that we're almost towards the end of the school year. So.
That's good. Anything else for Ashley, Maura? All right. If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures for the Board of Education for April 2022 in the amount of $4,614,237.71.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, recusals? Okay. All set. Ashley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Moira.
Good evening.
See you all soon, hopefully in person.
Exactly. Item number 5, review and approve a report of expenditures for town government for April 2022. Mary Jane, good evening.
Good evening.
Revenue?
Revenue, so at the end of April, we are 100.1% collected of our revenue, which is exactly where we were 2 years ago at this point, 2020. So you'll see that many of our departments have already brought in more revenue than budgeted. I'd just like to note that there are 3 departments that may not be able to meet their commitments, that being finance, although I'm hoping to be very close to that number, considering I brought in about 11,000 this current month, so I should be good for the rest of the year, but I'd like to be optimistic there. The police department, we have, they may also, but there are a lot less special duty opportunities at this point, so we'll see where that is. And of course, Park and Rec, mainly because of the rent of this building. Everybody else seems to be doing very well.
Okay. Any questions on revenue?
I brought it up last month, and the trend continues with youth and family services. The revenue side is good, but the need for their services remains very, very strong.
The expenses on the flip side are
Exactly.
also higher.
Exactly.
But,
Yep.
yeah.
We wish we didn't have the revenue so that we didn't have the need.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think anybody have anything on revenue? Okay. I guess we'll just move right to expenditures.
Don't have too much to say about the expenditure side either. We have discussed the items that are over budget at the moment, all items that have funds budgeted in other areas that you will see in our transfers for the end of the year. So we are at 81.4% expended through the month of April, right in between where we were the last 2 years. If you have any particular questions on expenses.
The only one I had was information systems, was tracking a little higher,
Well,
but
we have significant amount of expenses this past year that weren't budgeted,
I think we
that will
talked
be
about
coming
this
out
last
of the
month, actually.
technology fund.
Yeah.
The reserve for technology that we have in fund balance.
okay. It was 103 versus 100, but from last year at this time.
Yeah, a lot
Okay.
of things still related to COVID, like this room.
Yeah, right.
Is that going to continue, like, are you pretty much, you spent what you need to spend over the budget in that area?
Right now?
Or are there still some?
Well, we have our regular expenses to come out of there, so.
But nothing else big and unbudgeted?
Not really,
Okay.
no, not for the next 2 months.
Good.
Yeah, everything else seems to be tracking along lines, percentage, yeah. Okay, anything else on expenditures? Special fund warrants. I brought this up last month, I'm just bringing it up because I just happened to see it again, the reval, the municipal valuation that is coming up for October. So we're making, I see $18,000, so that's just a
Right.
payment we're making pretty much every month at this point, just to get to
Correct.
that point.
As things get done, I think after last month's meeting, I sent the board an
Yep.
email where we stood with that and what we had spent so far.
Right.
So we'll be.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You will see these payments, depending on how much work they're doing, every month.
Okay.
So I noticed a purchase from, out of the land acquisition fund for some property on Route 80, was that?
Matt, would you like to speak to the property?
Yeah, that is the property adjacent to the property that we've already purchased, the potential relocation of Public Works on the corner of Route 80 and Walk Hill Road. It is parcel, if you are standing on Route 80, looking at the gas station that's on that corner, it's a property to the immediate left. And that was approved at town meeting a couple of maybe a month ago, or within the last month. The rationale for doing same was that this abuts property that we now own, but it also creates the most effective access to the property from Route 80, because there'll no longer be a requirement that we'll go across wetlands in order to access the property. So that will most likely be one of the two entrances to the property. The anticipation is there'll be an entrance off of Long Hill, and there'll be an entrance off of Route 80, and that becomes the most effective manner to do it. Additionally, we picked up an option on purchasing the gas station property. There are some discussions that have taken place between engineering, public works, and the land acquisition folks about the value of that property, largely because it has a couple of relatively brand new tanks, gas tanks that were put in recently. My personal concern is I don't want to necessarily acquire or put any more in-ground tanks, because as I think you know, we are in the process of putting above-ground tanks at the current Public Works facility, with the anticipation that we'd most likely be able to move those to the new Public Works facility on 80 and Long Hill, if approved by the voters. So it's a long way to say this was an advantageous opportunity for us to pick up a critical piece of property that adds to the investment we've already made.
I thought you were going to actually, so environmentally, that corner property with the gas station, that's always, I mean, first thing you think of about development, but the underground tanks you just mentioned, right, are new.
They're brand new.
So they would be reused.
Well, within a couple of,
Would they be,
they could be reused.
they could be, okay.
Potentially.
Okay. But at least they're not 60 years old,
No.
because then that would be a problem possibly. Okay.
So with the purchase, you've got two pieces of land that wrap kind of around the gas station from Long Hill to 80?
Yeah, the gas station is now it's not the hole in the donut, but it's sort of the
Okay.
lower left, the lower right quadrant, looking at it from Route 8. And that, the individual who currently owns that has plans to retire, but he has not definitively determined when he's going to do that. But at that point, we would have the right of first refusal on the property.
One more reason
Thank
why
you.
it's good to have a fund available to move on opportunities as they present themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, when we originally started looking at the property, there was thought that we might be able to use it for a training site for our fire department to do a controlled burn on that site, but given the proximity to the gas station, a couple other things, I think the fire department has said there might be better places to do that.
May transition from a training to an actual.
There we go.
Yeah, well, yeah, and a DEP, but,
There's paperwork.
Okay. Anything else on special funds? Regular? warrants?
Just on special, I saw
Oh, sorry.
there's
Yeah, go
one for James Taylor and Simon and Garfunkel. You got them for $1,100. That's pretty good.
I didn't get a ticket?
All right, anything else
Good
on?
price, huh?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
We
Weeklies.
don't play together anymore, so.
I don't have anything on either. Medical?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, I was looking,
I had one on the warrants.
Oh, go- we can go back, go
There
ahead.
was the, let me see.
To the regular warrant?
The regular warrant.
Okay.
Yeah, the 35 or 40-page document I'm trying to find.
Yep.
It was a substantial expense for tree removal. And I was just wondering if it was something that we'd been looking to do for a while, or it was a kind of an emergency cleanup. It was $25,290 to Bartlett Tree Expert. It says tree removal, Westlake Crestwood. That's on page 15.
Yeah,
Kinda
I don't know of
halfway through.
any emergency tree situations that we had, so these were all planned, that we had purchase orders out for already.
Okay.
Just waiting for the winter to end.
Okay.
We have Kevin McGee, our environmental planner, has a targeted list of trees that need to be done.
Yep.
And, having sat in that chair for a number of years, we and we still continue to underfund the tree removal budget. Kevin does magical things with getting as much done as possible, including some extensive work with Eversource, and they have stepped up their tree removal budget here in Guilford over the past couple of years as well. So,
Yep. No, I mean, it makes sense that it's something that needs to happen. I just wanted to make sure this wasn't given the size of it, I thought it might have been some sort of
now, it was
emergency.
targeted. What Kevin also tries to do is he tries to bulk load these purchase orders so that he gets areas that are adjacent to each other, so that he can maximize the time to deploy the crews.
Yeah, like any project,
Right.
you pay to get the crews out.
The
Once they're
mobilization
there,
is
you
a
want
big
them
part.
to
Yeah.
do everything you can, so.
Yep, makes sense. And probably also waits until a certain point of the year where he knows that he can do this and he hasn't had a lot of emergencies to take care of, so he's got money kind of in the coffers to be able to do some things he wants to do, so not has to do. Okay, anything else on warrants? And then on medical, I was just going to indicate that we're tracking a very small surplus, but a bit of a deficit in the admin of the medical.
Yeah,
A little.
I wanted to specifically
Yeah.
comment on admin, because you'll see that for the month of April, our admin expenses were significantly less than other months. We do budget for a number of rebates that we get through the pharmaceutical companies. So those rebates are all part of the overall budget, but they come in all at one time. So that's why overall, the admin is over by $50,000, because you take that amount and kind of like spread it out over the whole year. But the rebates all happen to come during the month of April.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Yeah, I was wondering why it was so much lower, because it's been trending higher every month and then also
Right, so
substantially
some
lower.
of these rebates would have been accounted for within all of those other months.
Okay.
And we're not expecting any additional rebates, that's it.
No, I did ask our consultant, he didn't get back to me before today, but he was fairly certain that the majority of them are in, so.
Okay.
I have the question about the individual stop loss. It's not over yet, but it doesn't look like we're going to derive a lot of benefit from it this go around. Do you know the recent history of the stop loss? In the last few years, have we sort of come out ahead or behind if we maybe looked back 3 to 5 years?
We were tracking way ahead for many years through the stop loss, which is one of the reasons our stop loss insurance prices increased, because as we know the insurance companies aren't going to, exactly, because we were doing too well.
We're taking advantage of it in a good way.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the amount that we have insured for stop loss is indicative of what our experience has been over the past few years. this year and last year, our experience was a little bit lower, but there were a lot of, mitigating circumstances, with COVID and people not, I guess, doing as much but although usually the stop loss is those catastrophic things they aren't able to stop, but but they're low, just like all the other claims were low. So it has to have some correlation. Although I'm no doctor and I don't specifically see who or what is going on.
So in the last 5 years, you think more or less we've been ending up ahead?
Oh, absolutely.
It's been the recent increase
Absolutely.
that's caused.
This is a bit of a blip because it caught up with us.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I can put
More
something
than a
together to kind of show those. Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
Sure.
just maybe 3
Yeah.
or 5 years, yes or no?
Yeah, I probably want to go
Ending
back
up
a little,
ahead,
the
ending up
last,
behind.
we had a couple of years real low, so I probably need to go back a
And
few
as
years
we go
before that.
forward with the insurance company, would we consider declining the stop-loss insurance?
Well, as you know, we've had 2 whole meetings on
Yeah.
this subject.
Yeah.
We, going out to bid for stop loss and really taking a very hard look at it.
Okay.
We don't have any definitive answers right now, but definitely we know that it is something that we need to take a
Yeah.
look at.
And obviously, there's no crystal ball, but, when looks like it's a pretty big gap this time. We still have 2 months to go, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have to remember that ISL is a risk mitigation strategy,
Yeah.
that you are basically you're paying insurance against the worst case scenario. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Let's not forget, on this document, there are 19 cases currently in excess of $75,000. We have 7 that have already gone over $150,000. Won't take us long for that number to change dramatically. Yes, we're at the end of the fiscal year, but we're a couple of billing cycles away, and the healthcare folks are getting a lot better, but they're not always as timely as they might be. So there's a challenge there. Quite honestly, it's a crapshoot, Jonathan. You're willing to roll the dice on and create a situation where you have an unknown impact to your budget. At least with the ISL, you know what your upside exposure is, and that's part of the risk mitigation strategy.
I'm glad to hear that we're at least thinking about it. And then, obviously, when they raise their rates, it gets a little bit less tracked.
But you also want to be able to control your budget to a certain extent that you can.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, could you imagine if you didn't have it and all of a sudden you had, $1.5 million that you had to pay out?
Oh, it could go the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you really can't predict which way it's going to go.
I mean,
Talk about 150 is an arbitrary number. Okay, if you lower that to 100, your rate's going to go up. If you go to 200, your rate's going to go down. So that, our broker will give us a series of recommendations on how we should approach it, up to and including, as Mary Jane said, going out to the market for an RFP.
Going out to the market will really show us, where we stand. If the market comes back with similar numbers, then
I agree. Is that exhaustive to do that every year? To sort of go to all the providers and ask them, what they can do for us?
We haven't done it in a little while, have we?
we can't remember the last time we did a full RFP. We are planning on doing a full
This-
RFP for
Yeah,
this coming
this
year.
coming,
yeah.
Everything, the entire medical.
Yeah.
But we
Talked
have,
about that already.
we have pulled out the stop loss specifically for this year, so we're in the process of doing that right now.
Okay.
And as self-insured, we're going out to RFP for 2 things. One of which is a third-party administrator, right? Because they manage the process. These are our funds, our exposure, okay? They manage claim payment and processing and payments. So that's the administrative piece of this, which is, I think, budgeted at $2.3 million. Yes, that's eligible for RFP, and then the ISL stuff is eligible for RFP. I recall Joe Spurgeon talking about there's a narrower market for the stop loss because they traditionally don't insure somebody else who's running a third party for a self-insured. So there are some challenges there as well.
And they also don't always want to have it sectioned out. They want all of your medical insurance, not just the stop loss. So which is one of the reasons we're choosing to do next year a full. By the time we had all our numbers and we're working on this budget, we determined it was really too late to do a comprehensive RFP for July 1 and be ready for July 1.
Now, I don't even know if this is possible, but is it within the scope of the RFP to say that maybe we would go to a model that's not self-insured, but still give the employees the same kind of benefit, so that it doesn't affect their end of the
Yeah, that would
insurance?
not be part of that RFP. That would be part of an analysis of whether or not we engage straight up with an Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or you pick the provider.
Yeah.
But not up to and including the state plan, which is an opportunity for us. There have been some challenges with the state plan over the past few years as they introduced it, because districts, municipalities and school districts who have been facing significant rate increases in their current providers, have moved into that plan, and the experience that they brought to that plan required the state to fund to a significant degree the shortfall in the state's plan. Again, I have been on record that I'm somewhat concerned about moving into a state-administered plan, but I have a lot of confidence that the next comptroller will be able to clean that program up.
Although the more people you have in it, drives down, or increases competition, drives down costs, so that's.
How scalable it is,
Yeah.
certainly. I'm just glad that's on the table as being something they consider, because maybe all options can lead to the best outcome.
Right, and interesting
town.
enough, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities is doing an analysis now to set up a captive insurance carrier to do that for just municipalities, to provide health care for just municipalities. Similar to what we do with our property and casualty and our workers' comp, which is all run through currently. One of the advantages of going with a member-owned organization is we're not paying a profit motive. It's expense, and that's it. There's not a built-in 12% return for investors and shareholders.
Occasionally there's a dividend.
There are dividends. In fact, we have received a dividend every year since I've been sitting in this chair, and it usually it's been averaging around 80 or 90,000 a year, based on the performance of Kerma's plans.
All right. I know I keep drilling at this point, but there's some big money in the medical, obviously.
We have those same questions. That's why we
It'll
are
be
asking the same
interesting
thing.
to see what the marketplace, because it's competitive. It's not like you're gonna find like a golden nugget, because we just did it, and it's not like they came back and were really low. Do you know what I mean? So I think they're gonna be. I think we just have to be realistic about it.
I think the numbers next year, the projections, as soon as we can get them, will be helpful. I think during the conversations with Joe Spurgeon, I think he was pretty clear to say, we're spending about the same amount of money today as we spent 3 or 4 years ago on healthcare. So some of the measures that we took, particularly going to HSA, resulted in a flattening of the curve, the growth curve on medical expenses. So for us to be at relatively the same levels as we were 3 years ago is a statement in and of itself. We've enjoyed the benefits of not having to raise our healthcare costs in the budget over the past few years. But as I think you all know, this year caught up with us.
That was raised a couple times during the presentations. Board of Education
Yes.
brought that up. You looked at the number 5 years ago, and it went down, and then now it popped back up again. But it's the same virtually as it was 5 years ago. So.
Let's not forget our new exercise program is going to save us millions.
Right.
Millions.
Good point. Good point.
Good point.
Actually, I heard.
Some jumping jacks in the morning.
Did you sell out on that?
We have.
Oh, okay.
We have more.
Yeah,
Is
they
it
had
40 altogether? 20 from the
20 from each,
20.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was one of the webinars was today to to meet with the gentleman.
Nice.
So
That's great.
So you got 40 total.
I don't know about the Board of Education, I'm afraid.
There was over 20 that.
Okay.
wanted to
Oh,
do
okay.
it.
Well, there you go.
So we're coming back.
That's a good thing to come back for money.
It's a
okay.
very good thing.
That's it.
And I believe Mitch has already talked to the provider that they will take anyone who wants to go on the plan at that same discounted rate that the town gets. And if for some reason some of the original players drop out, that those people can backfill and the town will cover the cost. He will give credit for those people who drop out.
Yeah, that was the offer. That's great. That's great.
I want to see those pictures.
Anything else for Mary Jane, the town?
Thank you.
Otherwise, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town government for April 2022 in the amount of $2,791,961.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, recusals? I will be recusing myself from any payments to Antonazzi Associates this month, or last month, I should say.
Thank you.
Do you want to stay there maybe, or do you?
What's next?
Well,
Is it next?
yeah. I was going to say this should be quick, but I always say that and then I jinx it. Item number 6: discuss and take possible action to set the motor vehicle mill rate at 32.46. I will just briefly kind of set the stage in this so you all know. Most of you have heard that, and I'm going to somewhat read and paraphrase off of a document that I have. There was a motor vehicle tax cap that is going to effect for fiscal year 23, which means July 1st of 2022. So this is pursuant to HB House Bill 5506. The new motor vehicle tax cap is set at 32.46 for fiscal year 23. I mentioned the effective date of July 1st of this year. Beginning in fiscal year 23, grants to municipalities are instead calculated using the 32.46 mill rate cap and the preceding fiscal year's tax levy data. Grants for fiscal year 23 are equal to the difference between the amount of property taxes the municipality would have levied on motor vehicles for fiscal year 22 if the motor vehicle mill rate imposed for that year was 32.46 mils and equal to the mill rate imposed on real property and personal property other than motor vehicles. Ultimately, the understanding is our mill rate was set last month at 33.25. I should know that number by heart like that, but I think it's 33.25. And so for motor vehicles, we cannot go above the 32.46, which was capped. Mary Jane, I'm going to let you handle the numbers because there is an impact to us. But as you'll hear, it's not a huge impact, but it's enough that we need to ultimately tonight set the motor vehicle tax cap at 32.46 to comply to that. But the impact of that, Mary Jane's going to go over, or our first selectman, depending on who would like to draw straws on that. Okay. It's Matt.
Yes, as I follow this closely, Mike, you've given a good recap here. This is largely they dropped the current, there is already an existing cap on motor vehicle taxes, which I think is somewhere in the 40s at this point. So this was done, at the same time it was done with a change in the assessment methodology for motor vehicles. They now are going to a 20-year depreciation schedule based off the MSRP of the vehicle at its sales time. So the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, lowered that cap, which is designed basically to level the playing field, if you would, across municipalities. So, you know, a 2015 Honda Civic in Guilford is a lot less in taxes than that same car is in New Haven because their mill rate is in the 50s or 60s, right? So that was the intent of from the legislature, which is, I think, fair. There are a couple of shortfalls with the way this bill came out. The first of which is they're using 2020 motor vehicle grand list data as opposed to using 2021. So our grand list grew over that period of time. So what they are doing is they are reimbursing municipalities for the lost revenue by setting the mill rate at 32.46 versus what we had originally anticipated was going to be 33.25. So we lost approximately $180,000, Mary Jane, as a result of that difference. And the reimbursement formula that the state established, as I said, is based off of 2020 grand list data, and we are getting back a grant of about $37,000. So we have a hole, and that hole is one that we think is easily surmountable, easily accommodated for a couple of reasons. One, if you take a look at your documentation today, we're already at 100% on tax collections. The second piece is, as most of you know, we do not budget for supplemental motor vehicle taxes, which are taxes that are paid by individuals whose cars are not on the grand list as of October 1st. So we're comfortable that $140,000, whatever the number is, will be easily absorbed. So the other challenge is if we decided to go back and revisit the entire mill rate, it would require raising the mill rate to 33.31, which is basically 19 basis points of an increase over what we had anticipated. We passed a budget that we said was going to be a 1.94% tax increase. By going back and pulling out that $187,000 and then redistributing that to the balance of all taxpayers, the tax increase would have been 2.13%. So the legislature, in this enabling legislation, gave boards of finance the opportunity for those who have already had budgets determined and mill rates set to go back and revise the motor vehicle tax rate. We have to, in effect, we have to revise that. We would have the option.
We have to approve a new mill rate that is higher.
No, not even a new mill rate.
Just
that new mill,
but then the mill.
that new mill rate would have accommodated the
Clarify.
cap.
Yeah.
So, I apologize if I wasn't as clear as I should be on that, but.
No, that was yeah.
So
the actual
Yeah.
amount that we're losing in revenue, net the amount of revenue that we're receiving $37,549 from the state, giving us a net loss of $183,630. That's just on the mill rate. I'll just add as an aside that we had one other loss in our pilot grant of $36,937 due to the legislative budget. So total state revenue loss, or total revenue loss of $220,567 budgetarily.
Okay. Questions?
So you're asking us to approve a deduction
We're-
in the
nope.
mill rate?
We're asking you
Just in
to
the- just in the motor
approve
vehicle.
a mill rate.
On the motor
Yes,
vehicles.
a motor
That's it.
vehicle,
I think you're
yes.
voting for that.
I don't think I'm gonna have a problem with this one.
That's exactly what we're asking for.
Thanks, Steve.
Happy to do it.
That's pretty much what it comes down to. And so the makeup on that, I mean, we'll be able to figure it out.
Yes.
But that doesn't impact the mill rate for personal property and real.
No,
No, we are not. We are not asking to make any
no.
adjustment to
It's just
that.
for one item of the,
Just for the motor
Yeah.
vehicle.
exactly.
Oh, you should ask that question. It will, in the next tax season,
Yeah,
it will affect
but not
personal
this.
property because business motor vehicles will now be part of personal property taxes as opposed to standalone motor vehicle taxes. That's a change that's coming that our assessor tax collector will have to accommodate.
Was that part of this legislation?
It's part of the enabling legislation, but not for this year.
So does that mean that they're going to cap on all personal property or just on the
No,
motor vehicles that are
no,
included?
I don't know. That's the piece I haven't seen in the implementary bill.
Yet.
But I My suspicion is by moving it to personal property, there is no longer a cap. All right, so
So even though it's a motor vehicle, as long as it's a business.
it's being classified as personal property.
Just coming off the motor vehicle roll.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay.
Is this the first time that the motor vehicle mill rate is going to deviate from our property rate?
For us, yes. There
Will you
are,
be able to account for
there
that?
there are some 35 or so municipalities in the state who have already been under this cap, and you can well imagine who they are. They're the major urban areas whose mill rates are significantly higher.
It's been a bigger problem.
Yes, it's a much bigger problem. Now, I will say, I'd probably bore you guys to tears, but for about 15 months, I've been tracking sales, real estate sales prices versus the appraised prices in our assessor's database. I have a sample size of about 500 data points, and the average sales price is 35% higher than our current appraised price. Okay, not assessed price, the appraisal. Okay, so you do some math on the back of a napkin. If our grand list grows by a third, all right, what's that going to do to the mill rate? It's going to take the mill rate down by a third. So this might be a one-year scenario for us for the next, for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, because we'll be under the cap.
Yeah, if
That's
you
what
look
we'd
at
like, to be
assessment,
under the cap.
the evaluation here, if you look historically, you'll climb, and they'll get to a certain point, then the grand list will grow, and then it'll drop everything down. So, yeah, I've seen that over the history of all these years back in the early 90s.
And again, please, the
It
disclaimer is, that was back of the cocktail napkin math, all right? I'm not saying our mill rate is going to drop by a third, but there is a significant opportunity for our mill rate to drop
There's a
next
precedent
year. That will bring it
historically.
back down, and we will not be having this discussion about the cap next year.
That's actually a really good point. All right.
I think Jonathan touched on it a moment ago. So does it require any new software or anything from the tax
Yeah.
collector's perspective to generate bills at a different mill rate for the motor vehicles than it would for personal property?
No, because as Matt noted before, that we already have a number of cities and towns that are already, have already reached the old cap. So the software that we are using, which most cities and towns using, already is programmed for that.
Two different
Mhm.
mill rates, okay.
So we've already,
We're ready to go.
we're ready to go.
Ready
The
to
minute you, the minute you say all aye, we're ready to go.
All right, so as soon as we entertain this motion and approve it, we're
Yes,
ready to go.
we are-
Okay.
we are
You're
ready to
going.
go.
Okay. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to set the motor vehicle mill rate cap at 32.46 for fiscal year 22-23.
It's not the cap, it's the mill rate that we're setting.
That is the mill
Well,
rate.
Say,
mill rate,
At
it's
the
capped
cap.
at,
At
so
the
mill rate.
cap.
So remove cap, Tracy.
I'll second that, though.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Oh, I thought you put it in the form of a
I
motion.
put in, no, I entertained it. I thought I heard
Then I'll
move,
entertain that motion, yeah.
second. All right, now we got it. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent. Thank you, Mary Jane. Thank you,
very
Matt.
much.
Item number 7, committee reports, building permits. Anything on building permits? Item number 8, old business. I had 2 items I just wanted to bring up. Obviously, Board of Finance facilities tour next Monday, 12 to, I don't know, whenever we're done on the bus, to look at all the facilities of the town. So I'm saying 12 to 5 or so, but it will be starting at 12.
Yeah, where's
And-
our rally point?
We are meeting, I would assume are we meeting here or the town hall? Do we have a schedule?
Town hall is a town hall parking lot, I believe.
Town hall parking lot?
Like where we're going and.
Yeah, I think there's a list, there's a schedule of places that was sent out. Yeah, at least I got it.
You know what, I'll take a look, and I'll take a look and I'll send it to everybody. I don't recall it either,
Here it
but
is.
Are you the only one that got it?
Or maybe I made it up. I'd like to go.
You made the schedules?
Why don't you send that to us and then
I
we'll-
All
got
right,
a lot of
all right.
emails I
Well-
might have gotten, but I don't remember
We'll,
seeing.
we'll get on.
12
we'll get
o'clock at
there.
the town hall, and then,
All right.
yeah,
Yeah, send it. I might have to meet you en route.
okay. I'm definitely gonna have to meet you en route, so.
Just out of curiosity, is the Route 80, the new site up on Route 80, also going to be looked at, or is that because it's not a facility yet, Matt or Mary Jane?
Say that again.
The new site up on Route 80, is that, it's not a facility yet, so it's not?
Facility.
All right, I was just
I'm not
curious.
sure you guys want to be traipsing around the
No.
woods.
Not this time of season.
Steel toe boots, hard hat.
And pants,
Long
no
pants.
ticks. Right. All right, so
Stay away from the ticks.
12 o'clock next Monday. The second item I just want to bring up is just a follow-up on the basketball courts. I understand that a task force has been created, so I just figured it'd be good to just follow up on that particular issue for anybody even in the viewing public, so they have an update as well. So the task force has been formed and
Yeah,
is,
this morning, the Board of Selectmen appointed the task force includes 3 members of the public, Bob Hartman, who had
Yep.
volunteered,
Yep.
Lou Federici. I still don't have a definitive name from the Fire Commission, but from, I have an individual from Park and Rec Commission. I will be appointing Rick to be a member of that, Rick Maynard, as well as the chief or designee, probably the assistant chiefs. But as I said this morning, there is a good chance that the need for them to meet and do anything will be obviated based on some of the progress we've seen with working with the architects and the land use specialists relative to being able to modify the plan to fit the true needs of the storage requirements between those two entities on that property. As I said this morning, it's relatively easy. Fire, we can probably put the 2 bays on the north side. It'll be a little tight in there between, where the new training facility is going to be, but there will be enough room to allow for vehicles to get through and to be able to conduct safe and efficient training at that facility. The challenge is more with the police department, but one of the things the police department is looking at is would a single storage facility of that size satisfy their needs as opposed to the 2 that they originally had. So we have a committee that has been appointed. And we will at some point determine whether or not we are actually going to convene that committee.
great, thank you.
I had just a couple other things that I want to talk about this morning.
Old or new? This is old stuff, all right. Old business. Go ahead.
This morning, the Board of Selectmen voted to have a public hearing to revise the ordinance on our cannabis prohibition, so that we're going to extend that date until the 31st of December. That's going to enable our new town planner, who is turning out to be an absolutely terrific resource for us, give her time to put a program together to engage the community. Some of you may already know that there's a survey out, right? You can either get it on, you get it on your phone sometimes, or you can go on the website, or if you have friends who are in the day organization, they're populating this or spreading this around the community. So I just wanted to mention that. And then lastly, this is probably new business, so you take care of old business first. But
Anything else under old business? New business.
new business. The Board of Selectmen has recently approved some appeals of the denials for elderly tax relief participants. It is the exception, the basis we've made that, those exceptions and allowing them to stay on the plan despite having exceeded their revenue, not revenue, but their income levels, is there are several events related to COVID, many of them related to COVID, and also there are some that we feel are significant one-time events that do not necessarily warrant taking somebody who's been on the program for 10 or 15 years, and a one-time event makes them ineligible, which means they go to the full tax rate. It doesn't mean they go to last year's, it means they go to the full tax rate. So, long way of getting to, we are intending to reconvene the committee, or some of those members are no longer with us, unfortunately, he moved away. But we want to put that committee back together to take a look at that program to see what appropriate changes need to be made in that, including things such as a one-time exemption from the qualification requirements if you are already a member. And in addition to taking a look at the various thresholds and the income levels. That number has not been indexed since the plan was, those numbers haven't been changed since the plan was put in place, I believe, in 2005, 2004, somewhere around there. That's against the backdrop of, we have probably the most generous senior tax freeze program initiated solely by a municipality in the state. And there are a number of permutations of the ways we can go with that once we reopen it. But I will more than likely be looking for representation from the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and general members of the public. So just tuck that in the back of your hat.
Timing on that?
Well, we've got a little bit of time since we don't have to do anything until the next application window comes up. I anticipate doing this sometime in the fall.
Okay.
Convening something late summer.
Okay. I'm asking only because, you know, when I look at old business, new business, I want to, do I bring new business back up in old business next month? But we could put that on a bit of a hold.
Bob and Veronica aren't here, so we could appoint them now, you know?
I'll volunteer
You know,
anyway.
Bob will volunteer. You know why Bob will volunteer? It's
His
because
dad-
his
his dad
father was
was
on
on
the original
Yes, his
committee
father
that
was on it.
established that program.
Yes. Gotcha. Anything else under new business? Okay, public forum? Seeing none. With that, I guess everybody enjoy your Memorial Day weekend coming up. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Ashley, thank you for sticking it out. Linda told you to, right?